Thank you, Mr. President, and many thanks to my colleague, Senator Klobuchar, for her heartfelt words. So I rise today because my friend Melissa Hortman, Speaker Emerita of the Minnesota State House, incredible person and strong leader, was shot and killed Saturday morning along with her husband, Mark, in a tragic, politically motivated attack. Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were also shot a total of 17 times, and Yvette incredibly and selflessly used her own body to shield their daughter from the attacker. I thank God that they are expected to recover. I am filled with gratitude for the state and local and federal law enforcement that marshaled all of their resources to keep Minnesota safe after this horrendous attack and to mount the largest manhunt in the history of our state to capture this shooter late on Sunday evening. This was an unspeakable act of political violence, an act and an attack on our democracy as well as a personal tragedy. And there will be a time and a place to discuss the evilness of Speaker Emerita Hortman's assassination, the forces that drove her assassination to violence, and how we as leaders must rise to this moment and speak with one voice to condemn violent political attacks. But today, I want my colleagues and America and everybody back home in Minnesota to know the kind of person and leader that Melissa was. And I want to think especially of Colin and Sophie, who have lost their parents, their mom and dad, and understand that they will not be forgotten by me or Senator Klobuchar or many, many thousands of people. I hope that everyone will be able to understand a little bit more keenly the depth of our grief, the human cost to the loss of Melissa and Mark's family and their friends and their community, and to Minnesota and to our nation. So, Mr. President, I don't know about you, but I need a little inspiration right now. And Melissa was inspirational. The first thing you need to know about Melissa was that she was a middle-class girl from the North Metro of the Twin Cities. She was funny, she was straightforward, and she was kind. She was smart and driven and determined, and she did well because she worked hard at everything that she did. From her first job making burritos to her last job leading her caucus through a deeply divided legislative session. Nothing was handed to her, and she earned it through her work. And that is the inspiration of the American dream. The second thing that I want you to know about Melissa is that she believed and acted on one of our most American of values, the conviction that we all have a responsibility to one another. We have a responsibility to contribute to our communities, and we have this unshakable belief that our country is great because we feel that connection and that obligation to one another. Service to and respect for others was the guiding principle in Melissa's life. Over the last few days, there have been so many beautiful tributes written to Melissa's life and work, and I see a common thread in all of these remembrances, that even in the rough business of politics, she was someone who never lost focus on our shared humanity, those shared values, and that shared goal that we should all have in public service, which is improving life for Americans. And her gift for focusing on that shared humanity helped her not only to earn the deep loyalty of the members of her own caucus, but also the trust and respect of Republicans on the other side of the aisle. Current House Speaker, Republican Lisa Damuth, recently recalled how Melissa reached out to her at the start of Lisa's leadership. Melissa was the Speaker of the House, and Lisa was coming into leadership, and how she came to view Melissa as a mentor to her leadership. Many disagreements on policy, but Melissa was a mentor to her because she brought such clarity and honesty and compassion to their working relationship. And former Senate Majority Leader, Republican Paul Gazelka, reflected on his years of working closely with Melissa, and he noted that they had built a deep trust with one another because of her honesty, because of her even-keeled temperament, even though she was a very tough negotiator. He remembered their moment of human connection as they shared a hug after the passage of a landmark public safety bill and the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. And in recognition of that hug was in recognition of how they had worked so hard, coming from different places in such a difficult moment for Minnesota. So Melissa always approached her work by leading with compassion and respect for our shared humanity, and of course, she was unafraid to demand that respect in return, both for herself and for others. I mean, she was fearless. One of the most famous anecdotes of her speakership is, Amy was referring to this. One night, it was a long night, colleagues in this room can relate to it. It was a long night, the debate was going on, but there were members of the House that were making important speeches, making personal speeches about the impact of a bill that would have increased criminal penalties in certain protests. And meanwhile, there was a group of male legislators in the back room that were playing cards. And Melissa called them out on this. And these legislators, unaccustomed, I think, to being confronted with their rude behavior, expressed their indignation. And Melissa's response was pretty simple. She said, "You know, I am really tired of watching women, and especially women of color, be ignored." So she said, "I'm not sorry." Mr. President, I have to tell you that sorry, not sorry became a little bit of a rallying cry around the Minnesota State Capitol after that, and something that we all remembered Melissa for. She lived her values, and she knew how to stand up for others and insisted that we all treat one another with dignity and respect as we undertake the serious work of public service, even in a political climate that too often rewards meanness and sort of a dehumanizing of one another. But here's the third thing I want everyone to know about Melissa Hortman. She was a formidable legislator. Melissa's tenure of public service began long before her election to the Minnesota legislature. She was an intern in this very body for then Senators Al Gore and John Kerry. And after law school, she served as a clerk in our state's court system, and then as an assistant Hennepin County attorney. She first rose to prominence winning a housing discrimination case as a legal aid attorney. What she won for her client was at the time the largest civil award in Minnesota history for housing discrimination, and she was 27 years old. She volunteered on campaigns, she ran for office twice, losing before she won, and came to the Minnesota legislature. She was tenacious. And once elected, her talent was immediately obvious to her caucus, and by her second term, she was already mounting and growing in leadership. And by the time she was elected speaker, she had a remarkable record as a negotiator, an honest broker, someone who was true to her principles, even when she had to make tough choices. Melissa's leadership during the 2023 legislative session of the Minnesota legislature was nothing short of historic. Much has been written about the great accomplishments of this legislative session in Minnesota, Mr. President, but I think an underappreciated part of this was that this remarkable session didn't just happen in one short period. It happened because of years and years and years of work by legislators and organizers and activists building the support and the consensus. And Melissa was a part of that work from the very beginning. The success of that legislature and that legislative session came because of her ability to see an opportunity and to meet the moment and meet it with deftness and courage, and the result has been transformational to Minnesota. She always believed that you can make a difference for people if you work at it, and she did. And because of her leadership, more than 13.5 million more Minnesota students get a healthy and free breakfast and lunch in 2024. Minnesota is on track to eliminate all lead water service lines by 2023, thanks to Melissa. More than 65,000 Minnesotans were automatically registered to vote. And Minnesota, of course, is the state, we're very proud of this, with the second highest voter turnout in the 2024 presidential election, and the highest youth voter turnout by far. And starting next year, Mr. President, working Minnesotans who are starting or growing or caring for their families will have access to paid leave, thanks to Melissa. In short, millions of Minnesotans are better off because of the work that she did. Her record of accomplishment is so extensive, it's hard to capture it all in just a few short minutes. And so it is so bitter to realize that she was only 55. She had so many more contributions to make, so much, as Melissa would say, don't get carried away. I was just going to do my work. I was going to work as hard as I could. And so it is bitter for us that her life was taken in this way, and it will now be up to all of us to carry on these fights, and I will miss her leadership and her friendship as our state navigates these uncertain times. Mr. President, I look around this Senate chamber and I see legislators who, like Melissa, understand that the job of a legislature and a legislator is to help fix things, not just talk about fixing things, to lift up people who need help, to build opportunity, and to use the power of our connections to one another to build a better, stronger, more fair community. And I hope my colleagues will take heart and inspiration from Melissa's example and rededicate ourselves to what it means to be a legislator, working across lines of difference to solve problems for the people who sent us here. I want to just also close with a suggestion from Melissa and Mark's beloved children, Sophie and Colin, to all of us in Minnesota just yesterday. And it is in the spirit of Melissa's directness and down-to-earthness. She said, if you would like to honor the memory of Mark and Melissa, please consider the following. Plant a tree, visit a local park, and make use of the amenities, especially a bike trail. Pet a dog. A golden retriever is ideal, but any will do. Tell your loved ones a cheesy dad joke and laugh about it. Bake something, bread from Mark or a cake from Melissa, and share it with someone. Try a new hobby and enjoy learning something. Stand up for what you believe in, especially if that thing is justice and peace. May the memory of Melissa and Mark be a blessing to all who knew and loved them, and may John and Yvette have a speedy recovery, and may we all find a way to recover and be better after these terrible attacks. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.